Well, hi everyone, and an extra warm welcome to you, because I'm hoping that if you're watching this video you have made some sort of contribution towards the cost of running this channel. Now, because you've made a contribution, you get to see certain videos that are not available on the free site, and the reason this video and some other videos are not free is because they're going to require the use of specialist tools. All of the free videos are videos for the general man at home with basic general tools. Now what we're going to be looking at today is removal of this rear glass. Now a number of you have asked for this. I'm sorry I forgot to look up your names before I started this video. Yeah, you've asked how to remove this glass. Now if you look in the manual shows using a cheese wire, which is fairly standard in the industry for cutting pieces of glass out that have been bonded with the polyurethane sealant. Now there are a couple of problems with using the manual way. The first one, if I show you a glass already cut out from the car, is it doesn't mention this bolt here. Now this bolt is permanently fixed to the glass. It isn't possible to remove it, but to cut the glass out you're going to have to try and cut through that bolt, and you can't do that with a cheese wire, and you can't get a saw in there, so the chances are you're going to keep on breaking the wire, or you're going to end up breaking the glass. So that's the first problem we've got to get around. The second problem is, if you use a cheese wire to remove the glass, you're going to end up cutting through all the rubber and plastic around the edges, which then renders this piece of glass useless. Perhaps it's a problem, perhaps it's not. If the glass is broken anyway, it makes no difference. If you want to save the glass, you cannot use the cheese wire method. Then we move on to other things. Reasons you might want to remove the glass. First of all, obviously, if it's broken, you need to get it off. But if you do spraying the way I do, which means there'll be no masking off, just as they would at the factory, then it means you're going to have to remove this in order to properly spray along the edge here. If you mask off, invariably there's nearly always overspray wherever you mask. Paint gets into the most difficult of spots and it's almost impossible to get it off if you overspray. I've seen so many spray jobs which I consider to be car write-offs purely because they've masked everything. The glass, the trim, the weather strips, the window wipers, everything is masked off, and you get overspray everywhere. Once it's been oversprayed, to me that's a junk car. I like everything to be as it was when it left the factory. So I always remove this glass, and it can be removed easily. Now we come on to another problem. I looked up the price of this glass this morning. Each side is $258 plus tax. That's over $500 just for two pieces of glass that you would have to write off if you want to remove it to spray. Now, if you're paying for this channel, no matter how much you pay, that money's made back straight away just with this one video. So I hope you consider it to be a worthwhile investment. So let's have a quick look at the tools you're going to be needing. First of all, the basic tools, 1/4" drive wrench with an 8mm long body socket on it. Fairly standard tools. You're going to need a marker pen of some sort. I like to use a nice white marker. Clearly shows lines that you're going to be putting in place. A little craft knife may come in handy because there's going to be certain places that the saw can't quite get to finish off, but you'll be able to just get in there and just trim those last little bits. You'll need a tape measure of some sort. Must be a flexible type. You're going to be getting into some little corners. And finally, the specialist tool. Now, you may not consider this to be particularly specialist. Not so long ago, this was a garage-only tool. Now they're available on the domestic market for around $30. They're not that expensive, but the average man at home doesn't tend to buy this sort of tool. But you're going to need one for this job. Now, this particular one is an air saw type, thin blade. It's been bent slightly for a reason that you'll see in a minute. I have no doubt at all that there are battery operated tools that would do the same job, but this one's nice and convenient for getting into a little tight space. The only drawback is we're filming and it's going to be a little bit noisy, so we may have to mute the sound during the cutting. So that's all your tools you're going to need. We're going to start off very quickly with the cameraman going around to the inside of the car while I'm on the outside filming the first section. So I'll let him go around now and I'll catch you from the inside. Now for the first part of this process, you're going to have to remove the interior trim at the back here. That process has already been covered in the previous videos, so I'm not going to use up video time carrying out the same thing. If you refer to the previous video on, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's upper trim or rear trim removal, find that and it will show you how to remove these trims from here. That will then give you access around the glass, and in particular to this hole just here in the bodywork. Now inside that hole is that bolt that we mentioned earlier on, this one here. And there's a nut on the end of that bolt. You're going to need to get that nut off using your 8mm wrench. So, where's the hole? Right there. I can feel the bolt. Okay. You just got to be careful that you don't drop the nut once it's off. There we go. And now with that off, I'm able to get onto the inside and start with the removal of the glass. Now for the next part of the process, we're going to need to mark off the correct cut lines. If you get the cut lines wrong, then you're going to end up either hitting the bodywork with the saw or cutting through the rubber that you're trying to protect. So what we're going to do is mark onto the bodywork where the outside edge of the rubber bonding is. And to get those correct cut marks, you're going to need an old piece of glass to work out where the measurements are. Now I'm assuming that you don't all have an old piece of glass laying around, so I've already pulled one out and I've marked on here the measurements that you're going to need. Now the measurements are taken, I'm hoping the camera can see through this. We've got these little dots on the glass all the way around. You're going to measure from the edge of the dots towards the outside of the glass, and you see here I've marked these numbers. These are in inches, so if you measure from the edge of the dots there, 2 inches, that's where the outside of your rubber bonding is. On this one, it's 1 inch. This one, 1.25 inches. This one, 4 inches. This one, 1.75 inches. Now you're going to do those markings on the actual bodywork itself. So for instance, this side edge was 1.25, 1.25 inches. So we go 1.25 inches and you can see I've put a white line. On this bottom edge here was 1.5 inches. Up the top one, 1.75. Here, 4.25. Now as a rough guide, you can see from the edge of the metal we're approximately 3/4 of an inch, but that doesn't follow all the way around precisely, so it's just better to have an accurate marking on your paintwork where you're going to be cutting to. Now it's better to undercut rather than overcut, so if you mark off your basics first of all, and then if you need to cut a little bit further, which may well happen depending on who bonded the window, then you just cut a little bit more after. So with all your markings on the paintwork, you now need your air saw. Now what I've done is put a very slight bend in the blade. You don't want to bend it too much. If you bend it too much, then it will just fold it over when you try cutting. I've given it that slight bend to allow us to get in at a better angle and cut through the rubber. Now for me, I like to start down this edge here, and just so you don't cut too deep, you can also mark on your blade roughly the depth that you need to go to and no more. Also remember, when you try to start, don't go in at this angle because the blade will just be forcing back on itself. We need to get our pilot hole first. So we're going to go through at a slight angle to allow some brutal cutting through the rubber just to get us our pilot hole. Now at this point we're going to mute the sound because this is probably going to be pretty noisy. And just one other thing before we start. This black coating on the glass is unbelievably tough. I've never managed to mark it, but if you do end up marking it, it makes no difference. You can put a piece of black paint over the top, bond the glass back in, and you would never know any difference. So here we go. Right, I've just stopped for a second because I need some protection. It's starting to smoke. It's not good to breathe in the smoke from the polyurethane, and also I've got little specks of rubber flying off and hitting me in the eyes, so I'm just going to get some protection. So with some protection in place, we'll try and get back in that original hole and continue with what was cutting. That's not good. Time for another blade. With a fresh blade fitted, we're ready to start again. Just find the original groove if I can. There we go. I need to put a dot back on there. Don't want to cut too far. Okay, I think that would about cover it. Just let me pop outside and see what movement we've got. Okay, feels like a little bit down in the corner here. Try again. And now it's time for the blade. It's just enough gap in there now to get a hand in. And there we go. Job done. One piece of glass removed, rubber completely all intact and fully reusable. So that's the way you do it. I'm hoping that will save you a lot of money, shows you the correct technique to do it, or at least my technique. I don't know what the correct one is, but it shows you a good technique to remove that glass without damage straight away on one job. Over $500 saved. So for now, that's this video concluded, and for those of you who are paying, once again a big thank you to you. It helps a lot towards the cost of running these videos, and I'll be looking forward to catching you on the next one. Thanks for now. Bye bye.